Yeah, hello and welcome to my presentation about iExpressions, which is like a great After Effects extension that allows you to do many different things, and it's one of the projects that is really not so easy to communicate why it's great. So because it's more on the motion side of motion graphics, not so much on great images, but on great animation. And to illustrate you this, I've decided to name this talk, or to title it "Less is More." And this is exactly or this is an example of what I want to show you here. So if you do motion graphics, often people tend to add more and more effects to make it look more impressive. Yeah, so on the right you can see you have here the drop shadow and all of more stuff, and obviously the left side is much less, but it's more impressive. And so this is one of the things I really learned. I'm not a great designer, but I've learned if you reduce yourself to only doing a few things and doing them really good, the result will be better than if you try to add more and more to make it look interesting. Now the question is, this sounds obvious, and why are people trapped into doing more all the time? And I think one of the big points here is that if you try to do less, your result is often lesser. Yeah, it's not looking so great as you can see here. And so it's not easy to do less and still make it look good. And in particular, if you take a look at this animation here, so this is like the nicer version of it. And the other one is here the lesser version. And if you compare both of them, there's no big difference. It's almost the same. Yeah? And if you have a few keyframes only to animate this, it's hard to get it really right. And this is the point where iExpressions really helps you to get your animations better. So the point of view I have on this is like motion graphics has two different dimensions. One is the image side, making your images look great, and the other is the animation side, making your animations look great. And for making images great, you have tons of effects to change your image. For animations, you have keyframes. And keyframes, it's like individual dots. And I think there are people that are really skilled to paint in a paint program with a Wacom tablet, just putting individual dots, and they make amazing images. And it looks great. And the same is also here. If you're a talented designer with a few keyframes, you can do impressive things, but it's much easier to have some support here. And this is what iExpressions does. It has like a huge collection of expressions that act on keyframes and makes them look more interesting. And in this particular example here, this animation with this less, what happens here is that we apply some expression to it. So let me just open iExpressions. Here we have it. And iExpressions has this huge library of over 100 different expressions, like different motion ideas that you could use. In the physics simulation real-time category, you find the throw 2D, because we essentially want to throw this layer. It has some options that you can modify, and we just select the layer and click Apply. And now, if you take a look at RAM preview, you can see it bounces down automatically. This is what you get with this one-click choosing this expression here. And now you can see I want to get one step further. I set some keyframes, like I want to push it in some direction. So you go here and go like one frame further. And in this one frame, you take it and drag it in this direction. Now you can see immediately it updates, and you can play this, and this physics simulation is applied directly. So this makes it not just easy to get these kinds of animations, but it also gives you more freedom to experiment. Because if you think you would keyframe this by hand, this animation, maybe it takes some time and then you get a decent animation, but then if somebody comes and says, well, maybe it could fly a bit faster or a bit more or whatever, you won't touch it anymore because it was so much work to get this one animation. And so iExpressions really allows you to be more creative, to experiment more. The rest of this presentation, I want to focus on different parts of this animation here. So let's just take a look at it. It's like a sci-fi user interface thing. And all these animations were done with the help of iExpressions, and I go into more details about how exactly they were applied to make this look so interesting. Okay, that's the animation, and the first part that I actually want to focus on is here this part where like the system boots and you have these random numbers here. Yeah? Let's take a look how this is created in After Effects. Here we have this composition where this is happening, and you can see essentially we have here many copies of the same layer. We have here this text pattern, and we have some mat on top of it. And if you just take a look at this mat, it's a really basic mat animating here like this. And then we have this text pattern below it, with the mat applied. And then to make it even look a bit more interesting, you have many copies of the same, and they are a little bit shifted to make it look a bit more noisy, essentially. Now, if you look at this text pattern, this is exactly what we want to generate with iExpressions here. So I go into the text pattern comp, and it's looking like this. Now you can see it's like a pretty advanced pattern, and again with this idea with these individual keyframes, of course you could animate your source text and start modifying it, but you would never end up with something like this. And the other option might be to, okay, let's buy some stock footage that has this pattern, but then you're not able to control the font, you're not able to really detail, to really control it in detail what is happening here. So how is this working? How do we create this interesting kind of animation here? So let me start with a clean version of this composition, where I have essentially nothing than text with the font that I want to have and the correct font size. And then we go to iExpressions and go to the source text bundle. In the source text bundle you find tons of expressions to modify text, and there is an entire category for random text. And one thing you have here is the random text block simple. As it says, it's like the most simple thing you can do. You just apply it to your layer, so click apply, and you have here this nice text block that is animating over time. Yeah? Now you can change the size of this text. So we want to have 125 characters in a row and 32 rows. Apply. And now we have here our much bigger text. And now, the next thing that we obviously want to have is we want to influence what letters are visible here. And you can do this with going here to the alphabet. And now you can see instead of binary, for example, we want to have arbitrary numbers, and you can apply this. And now it changes. Yeah. Now instead of clicking apply all the time, you can just once click this one, which I call the auto apply, and then whenever I live change here something, it is automatically updated. So I can even say I want to have a custom alphabet. And this custom alphabet is currently here, this AAABC. It's like the more copies I have of a character, the more often it is taken. So I can say something like I want 0 and 1, but I also want empty spaces. So I put spacebar, and I can do it several times if I like. Yeah. So, and if I now leave focus here, you can see it updates. And now I have my nicely animating text pattern. I can also change the speed. Like currently it says do a new text every 5 frames. If you want to have it every frame, just change it, no problem. Now this is just really like the beginning of what you can do with these text elements, because you've seen in the original one we had these lines like let me open the numbers wipe here again. You have here these lines that were moving left to right, and we want to integrate these in the pattern. How is this working? Well, you can just create a second copy of this, and I call this copy line. And let me solo this line for a moment. And we say this one should have only 4 letters wide, and I also don't want to have now it is complaining because it doesn't find my old layer anymore. It's like we had this auto apply enabled. Now I made 2 copies of my layer, so to which one should I auto apply? So it says I don't auto apply, please apply manually again. So I go to this line, say apply, and now we have this line here. Yeah, and we can also get rid of these empty spaces. and apply it again. And now we have our line, and over time it changes. Sometimes it has 0, sometimes it has 1, sometimes it has both. And now we want to combine these two. For this we have yet another expression that can overlay these patterns, because, I mean, of course you could put them like this, just place them on top of each other, but then you have positions where you have 2 letters, and this is not what we want to have. We want to have one text. They should like be merged into one text. This is something you can easily do, so I again duplicate this line layer and call this here like main or so. And I actually make all other layers invisible because I just need them like a source for my merge, but they should not be visible individually. So I go to this main layer, choose it from my library, from my source text bundle, in the random text, my text combiner. We have text combiner multi if you want to ins more than 2, and text combiner that just combines 2 texts. Now, a very important concept of iExpressions is something we need here, and this is linking. Whenever you have values that you can enter here in your properties of an iExpression, you cannot just enter here a static value, but you can also link this. Here I have a text, and I can say my background text. I don't want to enter my background text here manually. Please take my background text, well, from the source text of this background layer. So I select it and click this link button, and now the input disappeared, and it said this is linked to the text of my background layer. Now I have here my foreground text, and again I want to say the foreground text, I want to have this line here as my foreground text. So I select from this line the source text, click here, and now it's linked. Now I apply this to this main layer, and you can see immediately we have our random pattern here and inserted at position 5, 2, so in the 5th row and in the 2nd column, this overlay text. And I want to have it here in the 1st row, obviously. I apply it, and it jumps up 1. Now we are not yet finished with how we can combine our iExpressions. We want to make this line here move. Yeah, moving means we want to animate this property here, this position value. So I just select this layer, no property, just a layer, and say link this position. Now it asks, we haven't selected any property to link with, should I create a property for you? And you just say yes, please create a property for me. And now we have an effect here, which is now the position of this text combiner, and it's currently at this point. And let me just reapply the expression, because every time I change it I need to update it or enable this auto apply. Now our overlay text is gone, and this is because it's inserted at position 960, 540, which is way out of the visible range. So I set this to like 51, for example, and now it's here in the middle. Now it's at position 50. And now I can keyframe this. I can start keyframing this and animate it left-right. I can do even more. I can again apply an expression to this. Yeah, so I don't care about the exact movement. It should just wiggle a bit left and right. Now you might know the wiggle expression. With a normal wiggle expression, the problem would be I just want to wiggle the first parameter here. I just want to wiggle left and right. I don't want to wiggle up and down. No surprise, we have in the iExpressions library of expressions also an entire wiggle category with various different wiggle expressions, and one of them is a separate wiggle 2D, which allows me to wiggle in X and Y direction independently. So I just choose this from my library, and now I say something like I don't want to wiggle up and down at all, so I set the amplitude to 0, and I want to wiggle left and right by 50. So I apply this to my point, apply, and now if you take a look at the RAM preview, you will see that you have now your line and it's moving over the screen, it's wiggling, and again all of this just with the help of expressions, but without a single line of code. Just with, you have different ingredients and started combining them. You created the background pattern with one expression, created the foreground line with a second expression, with a third expression you merged them into one text, and then with another expression you started moving the position at which you merge. So it's like just little building blocks, and if you start to combine them, you really get the full power out of this package. And you can see how creative you can be with this. It's really for experimenting. Don't spend much time in writing hundreds of keyframes, just use the built-in ingredients, so to speak. Okay, this is this part of the project with random numbers, and the next element that I want to discuss in more detail is the one that you have. This one is coming in a minute, but this element, this is one I also want to show you how I did it. See again, here we have these elements moving in interesting ways in this circular shape. If you take a look at the After Effects project of this, here we go. This is like the core composition where this element is created. Yeah, and here you can see the animation that is going on. So what I did here to get the circular shape is to actually apply a polar coordinates effect to an adjustment layer. If you get rid of this, you can see we just have a normal grid. Now this is like what is going on in the background, and the polar coordinates makes it look a little bit more interesting. Now another adjustment layer I have here has a mesh warp effect that just makes this grid a little bit less regular. Yeah, here you have a normal regular grid, now it is warped a bit, and now we get it into this circular shape to get into this. This is not expressions related, just basic After Effects. But now the next question is, how do I make these points move in an interesting way? Yeah? And if you take a look at this is probably a kind of animation that you don't want to keyframe, because it would be really tedious. And if you look at it, you could also have the impression, okay, this is something I can use a basic wiggle on. Yeah? What I actually did is I applied here first a wiggle from iExpressions. You could use another wiggle if you like. And then I baked this into keyframes. iExpressions has this nice bake button here, and for your work area you immediately get keyframes. And I did this because I wanted to apply a second expression on top of that. And the expression that I applied on top of it, I want to load it here. So if you want to modify existing expressions that you have applied, it's not like a one-way street. You apply your expression and then you can never touch it anymore. You can just select the expression, or here select the property where it is applied to, click load, and now it knows a snap to grid expression is what was applied here. These were the parameter settings, and now you can change it. I just want to set the smoothness here to 100% and apply it to all these grid elements. So I select all of them. This is also a great thing. It's easy to apply it to many properties simultaneously. Apply, and by what the snap to grid makes, it really makes traveling from one point of a grid to another one. It takes any animation and changes it so that it moves from one grid cell to the next. And you can set here the size of this grid. Yeah? If I set the smoothness to 100%, that means ignore my grid completely. Just move 100% smoothly. And this is like the same as if you had the expression not applied at all. So you can see it's just the basic wiggle that I started with. Now if I do the other extreme and say be not smooth at all, this is something you could maybe also program by hand. If you're a bit skilled with expressions, you can do some rounding of coordinates, and what you will end up with is, you can see it takes a while to apply it to all these, but now you can see it will abruptly jump from one grid cell to the next one. Yeah, it's no transition anymore. It's not smooth, 0% smoothness. And also maybe it looks that it's interesting in some cases, but where this snap to grid becomes really powerful is when you say, okay, I want you to have a smoothness of 20%, which means like if you are traveling on your keyframe path, 80% of the time stay on a grid cell and then spend the remaining 20% to travel smoothly from one grid cell to the next one. And this is what I think really sells this animation here. Yeah? It makes it look a bit organic. It's still a bit like digital in this grid, but you have smooth movements from one grid element to the other one. And again, this would be really tedious to keyframe. And if you would keyframe it by hand, you would not experiment so much. You wouldn't say, okay, it looks interesting, but does it look better if I do 30% smoothness? And you say, okay, I see you back in 10 minutes or 10 hours keyframing. So this is where animations get you. You can really get creative again with your animations with this package here. So the next element that I want to talk about is this element here. So yeah, you can see we have the circle and it follows our hand. And this is something where you really might wonder, okay, do I really need expressions for this? This is not just 3-4 objects that I need to keyframe. This is not too much work, right? So let's take a look at this project. The nice thing is that this is now a fully automatic rig, so I can grab this element and move it over time, and everything is following completely automatic, which really makes it more convenient to animate. And how is this working? These are physics simulations from the inverse kinematics section of iExpressions, and where usually they are used in character animations. Yeah, if you have like an arm or a leg and want to move it, it's like here I have just one of these 3 lines of, this is like 3 different arms. You have here one arm, here a second arm, and here a third arm, and in this case all of them are attached to the same hand. Yeah, but normally you use this in character animation, where you have just one arm and you have this scroll and this one arm follows. Now you can see you don't only can use this in character animation, but also here. And now you might ask, okay, why does it make sense in this case? Why can I not keyframe this by hand? Well, let's try to keyframe this by hand. Here I have a really basic movement. I have my goal point moving from here in a straight line down to here, and I have 2 keyframes on my goal point. Yeah, really nothing fancy at all. Now let's try the same with a copy of my arm that I've prepared here. So this red copy of the arm, I want to do the same, and what I've done is I have these two layers, yeah, lower arm and upper arm, and I've parented one to the other. So it's like if I change here the rotation, this one changes. If I change here the rotation, both of them change. This is what you would probably do without inverse kinematics. And now all I obviously need to do is set my keyframes here for the beginning. I have already set them, and set my keyframes for the end. And now it's, of course, a bit less convenient since I cannot grab this point and move it anymore. Yeah, so, but I can obviously tweak here the rotation values. So let's do it like this. You can see it already doesn't feel really nice, but the problem is actually much more severe. So, and this is, I just want to enter the exact value that I have here on my expression to be sure I have exactly the same value, 118.4, like this. Okay, and then the other arm, let me just look up the rotation value from here. It's minus on this keyboard. Okay, I think it doesn't matter to really get it. Now we have it. Okay, now we have our animation, and if you now compare the two, you notice, wow, they make quite some different thing. Yeah, I have 2 keyframes here and here, but it's not the same movement. This one is doing what it should, namely travel in a straight line from the one point to the other, and this one is not, because like applying rotations to 2 layers that are parented in some way is not the same as a straight movement. And you could think of, okay, you have here some easing going on, and you don't have this easing here, so maybe this is a difference, but it's actually not. So if I apply here the same easing, so here easy ease, and here easy ease out, or in actually. Now you have the same easing, but still the movement is very different. Yeah. So it's like if you do it like this without expressions, it's really hard to get some basic things like travel in a constant speed on a straight line. It's like almost not possible, and you really need this in this case here. Now this is where these inverse kinematics iExpressions make it not really more convenient to animate and also to automate everything. Yeah, because again you have here really an automated rig where you can just grab this point and everything follows automatically. Really nice. So thanks a lot for having the time to listen to my presentation. And if you have any questions or want to talk to me personally, feel free to do this now. Thanks a lot.